Alright, we'll continue. Hilchos Basar v'Tolos in Tzadik Beis. We're going to Sif Ches. What I mentioned last time, that we were going to discuss, is not necessarily in Sif Ches. I thought it was Sif Ches. In reality, it's a separate detail in Halacha which we learned in the Hilchos Taaruvot, but because they are related, we're going to cover it. It has to do with cooking or baking fleishiks and melichiks underneath a machvat, underneath a cover. In other words, the two are sitting in the oven, and they are covered by a joint cover. As opposed to each one having their own kisui, their own cover, they are underneath or below a sort of machvat, as it's called, a pan of sorts that covers the two of them. And we'll see what the problem is. The halacha here, however, is not really that. The halacha here is talking about an opposite situation where the machvat, where that pan beneath the pot of meat, it's a dairy pan that is lying on the very bottom of the oven, and on top is the pot of meat. So the situations are a little bit different, but we will see what the common denominator is between this and some very important halachas that we covered in Taaruvot. But before we get to that, just wanted to add or elaborate a little bit more on that last halacha of the Ramah in Sif Zayin, which would fit into what we're going to discuss now. And that was that if you had a tipa, if you had a drop of milk falling on the kisuya kedera, falling on the lid of the pot, then it's considered as though it fell keneged aroitev, right? Which means that we don't have to be so concerned about the piapua, because the piapua means, in other words, the spreading of the tam or of the milk will eventually enter into the tafshil, into what is being cooked, and become bottle. So the Ramah says, as long as the gdera began to cook, began to boil. The az olah haze'ah tamid, because then the ze'ah, the steam, will go up, umagia lakisui, v'yored misham el harotev, and then it would go down into the roitev.
And it's doing that constant.
What?
It's
yeah, exactly.
Constant going.
Yeah, right. Now, so the Ramah says very clearly that what he's talking about is a situation that is very similar to tipa shenaflo keneged mokom aroitev. Falling on top of the lid is very similar. Now, the Taz on that makes two very important points. He says that just because it did not begin to lartiach, it did not begin to boil yet, does not mean that the lid will not become asur. Maybe, he says, I'll grant it that which is in the kedera is not asur yet, or it's not a problem yet. He says, nearly, once it's on the fire, the kisu itself is already considered roteach, v'hi asuron, and it will be asur. Since it's already sitting on the pot, on the fire, it's warming up. And he says, so he's going to make the kisu yakdera asur regardless of whether the zeya is coming up or not. The tafshil may be okay. The tafshil, I mean, it's still not hot. It's not a problem. There's no connection between the tafshil and the kisu. But the kisu yakdera will become asur because of the heat or whatever heat is there. Then he brings down the marshal that completely disagrees with the Ramah, and the Taz says, I will go along with the marshal. So the Taz and the marshal both disagree with the Ramah. And this is what the marshal says, even though they give different reasons for what they say. And I think it pays to review it. Ube'ikar din zeh shekosav Ramah kan, legabe de'ikar din, that it's kinoflo al gabe kedera, keneged aroitev, in other words, the Rashal choylek. The Rashal disagrees, and he says, it may be that the steam goes up until the lid. Yeah, that's possible. We don't say just because steam goes up, we don't say that automatically they combine just because steam goes up, who tells you that which is in the tafshil combines with that which is on the lid? In other words, who says they become one? He says no, they don't. And therefore, he wants to be machmim. Ein ba'kisu shishim neged ha'isu shenofal aleho. There's no, in the kisu, you don't have 60 against the isu that fell on it. Nasi ha'ikisu in the vela. And you know what that means if the whole kisu is in the vela. That you will need 60 times 60, like we had before. So the Tas says, Chen mistaber lani is daiti. I go along with this, I agree with this. And you know why I agree with it? Because they're not exactly the same. Tibo shenoflo keneged haroitev, against the liquid, is different than falling on the kisui and having steam come up to it. He says like this: the shani begdero neged haroitev sharoitev atzmo hu tamid sham. In a gdera that has roitev and the drops are falling next to where the food is, the liquid is always there. So you can make the claim that the tipo went inside. Masha'enkin bekisui, he says, if you're talking about a kisui, you're having drop falling on top. It could very possibly be, he says, Shema be'oiso pam shenoflo tifu, maybe at that moment that the tipo fell, lo also reticha ada kisui, maybe at that exact split second that the tipo did fall on the kisui, at that moment there was no reticha coming up, ada kisui mamish, therefore it's just fake the rice and the chumrah.
So he's making it dependent on the lid? Or is he also
The
talking
steam.
about
The steam. He's talking about the resicha.
So he's not talking about an uninterrupted steam. The reticha sounds like he's talking about the actual food rising.
No, we're not talking about the food. We're talking about the zeya only,
zeya.
right? The resicha.
So
It's a question whether it's resicha or zeya are two separate things. That's a separate question. I saw someone say that the Pri Chodosh, I think it is, would agree with the Ramah and not, in other words, as opposed to the Tas, because one is talking about zeya and one is talking about resicha. And maybe there's a difference between zeya, the steam, and the actual food coming up. You know, because zeya maybe once you have zeya, it's constant. You have humidity all over, and that may be sufficient. And not only sufficient, it may be better than resicha, because resicha you may not.
Down again.
Right, or whatever, exactly.
There are a lot of gaps.
There may be gaps, and that's what the Taz is saying. Maybe at the moment that Tipa fell, there was no resicha, he says.
Right.
Okay, so it's an interesting point.
But Ramah is relying on the zeya. Ramah is talking about
Apparently, yeah, because he says that he mentions zeya.
and zeya normally continues.
Is continuous, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Sif Ches has a lot to do with zeya, and in order for us to understand Sif Ches,
Holding is a matter of hook, and there is no interruption.
we have to actually see it. That's the thing. Preferably, we should be able to see if there's zeya.
The problem is the lid on top of the pot,
You're not going to see it right away.
So is the pot holding that?
He says it may not have been initially when the tipa fell. They may not have been there.
Reticha.
Right.
So the question is the zeya and reticha thing.
Right.
If-
That's a separate question.
So if, according to the opinion...
Because remember, the Ramah added on what the Gabadik Din of Kisir Torah, he says, what I said was only on condition that the itchilak der le'artiach.
Yes.
But if it wasn't, then it shouldn't be a problem.
But he's not making the reticha that element that has to reach the lid. He says the condition that there should be
Was
a
a zeya.
constant flow of zeya
Right.
is that it has already started reticha.
Yeah. Then I would allow for it.
But it seems the Taz, so by the Ramah, apparently zeya and reticha is two distinct things. Because the presence of the reticha is the guarantor that, in the words of the Ramah, there will be zeya.
Yes.
So by the choice of words of the Ramah, it seems that reticha and zeya are two different things. Otherwise, why would he make the reticha a condition of zeya if it's one and the same thing? It would be saying it itself is the condition of itself.
No, the Ramah doesn't say reticha. It just says itchil akdero lehartiach. That's just
Reticha.
No, but the artiach over here he means to actually boil.
Yes.
Yeah, he's not talking about the resicha going up and
No,
down.
no.
He's talking
But
about zeya.
The
Yeah.
reticha is a condition of the presence of zeya.
Oh, zeya, yes.
So for him,
Then we have. Then it's like you were saying. Could we know? Yes, we make the assumption that once there is resicha, there's zeya.
and then according to the
If it's covered, yeah.
But according to the Ramah, then there will be two things.
Yes.
The reticha is what has to be there in order
Right.
for a different thing, zeya.
For zeya to be present.
To be
Yeah.
present.
And that, of course, would make the situation a lot better, as opposed to not having. But to that, the Taz says even if you don't have the zeya, the kisu would still become aser. That's the
The
Taz.
Taz seems to be making it dependent on the reticha itself reaching Kisur.
Yeah, but there's two separate things. The Taz saying two separate ideas. One is the Kisur can remain Asur, even
Right.
though the Tafshil is Mutter.
Right.
Plus, he goes along with the Rashal that it could be that for a different reason. The Rashal says they two don't combine. You tell me you have Seah, so what? Just because you have Seah, does that mean it combines with the Tipa? Not necessarily. So that's a different kind of a Chiddush. Whereas the Taz says, no, it could be that at a given moment where the Tipa fell, there was no Resicha. Okay.
It would seem also, I wonder
Yeah.
if anyone is it,
Yeah.
that time factor, how long it's play a role.
Yeah, we're going to see that next.
By the Zayah, I mean.
Yeah, but the Seah.
Because
There's no amount of time in it, but we're going to see the term
it will
that
take some time until the full
the
draw.
term that is being used is a reasonable amount of time, something like that. We're going to see that in Sifches. Sifches is an important seif because it touches on various points that we've covered in Hilchos Taaruvot. So let's pretty much discuss, perhaps let's begin with terms. Do you recall Reicha Milsahi or Lav Milsahi? We have a machloket, it's from the Mikvaot Gemara and then from the Rishonim. Does Reach, does the smell, the odor, does it constitute anything? Milsahi or Lav Milsahi? It's a machloket, it's a big machloket all over the place. We hold for the most part, the Maaseh leMaaseh, we hold Reicha Lav Milsahi. Yeah, that's how we hold. Not lechatchila, but at least b'di'eved. Lechatchila, we have concerns. Siman Kuf Ches is a little bit about that, right? About baking Isser v'heter in the same oven. Think about it. Isser v'heter, Basar b'chalav, and we're going to talk a little bit about that again. In the same oven, what could be the problem? They're not touching. They're not on top of each other. And they're for sure not being cooked together. Each one is on its own, and especially if each one is in a pot, so they're really surrounded by walls of the pot, which is easier as opposed to two things being roasted in the open. In other words, on a spit in the same enclosure, because then they're both exposed. As the Mechaber points out over there, being in a pot in the same enclosure is better than not being in a pot. Okay, so what are the issues concerning cooking or baking two things that are, what Isser v'heter or Basar v'chalav together at the same time? What are the issues? The issue is of Reah and Zeah.
open. אם הכלי של החלב מכוסה והכלי.
אנחנו נראה את זה בהמשך. אנחנו נראה את זה, we're going to talk about that, of course. But right now we're talking about the problems. What possible problems can there be? One is the Reicha, which is a question whether it's substantial or not. Is it significant? Does it make a difference or not? And the various halachas that we covered in Halacha Taaruvot point out a difference between a lechatchila and a b'di'evet. Plus, they point out a difference between something which is shaman and something which is not shaman. Gabe pitum. Even in a reicha, it could make a difference. So reach is one thing. The other is zeya. Zeya is something completely different. Why? Why is zeya different than reach? Because zeya is mamashut. It's not reach, which is questionable whether it's anything. Zeya is something. So with zeya, we have to be much more careful than with reach, because zeya can and does in certain situations make trouble. The zeya, was coming out of the isur, the zeya coming out of the basar to the chalav into the basar. So that is a little bit of what's going to be going on in the Sifches, even though Sifches has an additional detail that is not necessarily the problem in Siman Kufches, but they're both similar, so that's why I want to go over a little bit of the dinim that apply to the two of them.
Now, I'm not sure if we...
The steam. The vapor or the steam.
So that would be the same thing?
Yes, exactly the same thing in modern Hebrew called edim. Edim, yeah, exactly. Whereas in the Lashon Gemara, it would be called ze'ah, the sweat. Yeah. All right, so before we go into the sif, let me just quote you an interesting Aruch HaShulchan. It's not really him, he's actually quoting the Beis Yosef, but it's an important halacha. He brings down the Beis Yosef that in the event that somebody by mistake, and this can happen in anybody's home, went and saw that the soup, the chicken soup, was uncovered, Erev Shabbos, And you can't cover the pot on Shabbos. A pot that is uncovered, you don't want to cover. Especially if it's not fully cooked. Because by covering a pot, that is, the food is not fully cooked, you're cooking it, you're increasing, it's a form of visual. So you don't want to even take off the pot to check on the food, and then put it back on if the food is not completely cooked. If it's cooked already and you want to just check and put it back, it's okay. But not if it's not fully cooked. It's a problem. So not having had a cover before, just watch out. That's Shabbos. Now, this is not Shabbos, but it's Erev Shabbos. You see a pot of chicken soup on the stove. You say, oh, we forgot to cover it. Let's go cover it. And you took out a cover from your cabinet.
You're talking about a lid, no? Proper lid.
A lid. And you covered it. Baruch Hashem. Then...
That's not called Hakana Mosif.
No, that's something else. No, because then it would have to cover it all around. Yeah. So all of a sudden your wife comes in. Oh, what did you do? He says, I did you a favor. I covered the pot. Yeah, but you used the Melicha cover. That's the cover of the Melicha pot. This could happen, especially if it's the same kind of size. Otherwise, if it was too small, it would fall in. If it was too big, you'd notice it.
You sound like you're speaking out of...
Well, not with the lid, but things like that have happened in kitchens. But with the lid, I don't think it has happened, but maybe it almost happened. I don't know. I mean, all these things come up. So that's the question. So the Mechaber, the Beis Yosef, brings down the case. So what happens if you took a kisui, right, of tafshil shel basar, a fleshik kisui, and you covered a Melicha pot, or the other way around. You took a kisui chalavi and you covered a tafshil or a sir, a pot, a fleshik pot. Oh, that's very good. That's the next question you got to ask. If you're evaluating the situation, he says, "Oh no, it's a mistake. It's definitely a mistake. It's a problem, possibly." So the next question will be: is this kisui ben yomo or not? It makes a difference. Was it used within the last 24 hours or not? Okay. So let's assume the kisui is ben yomo, right? And
it was used for milk or meat.
Yeah, of course. And it remained covering the pot, the wrong pot, for a good amount of time. What is a good amount of time? 3 minutes.
When the pot was
not 20 seconds.
When the pot was yatsolet,
now that you did with the wrong pot.
Yeah, with the wrong pot. Yeah. Right.
Situation with the pot, yatsolet.
Yeah, of course. We're talking about yatsolet, but always the problems always arise when you have the heat. Yatsolet. And you had it the way it's phrased over there for a good amount of time. In other words, say, I don't know what it is, but say 2-3 minutes, a couple minutes, not 30 seconds. Right? It was there for a little while. Then what's the halacha? You need shishim keneged kol kisui. It's the opposite lid from the other one, from the basar or the khalav. It's a ben yomo. So it's like melechik and fleshik. Because once the two are in heat, right, and there is steam going on inside. Why is that important that we have steam going on inside? Because anytime you have two pieces of metal touching each other and there's no rotev in between them, there's no liquid, time cannot be transferred from one to another. That's a famous rule we learned. Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. Metal. Two pieces of metal, right? The time is not transferred from one to the other without rotev in between. That's a famous rule. We covered that various times in Taaruvot. So, here you have two pieces of metal. Of course, you're touching, but you have all this liquid inside. That's what's generating this problem.
Now, is the problem that you're looking at because of the liquid there is a transfer from hot?
Yeah.
Or is the problem you're looking at because of the liquid
both?
There's a transfer from the liquid?
Both.
Both. Yeah,
both. The dairy will become usher, the food becomes usher. Sure, it's a big problem.
In calculating the 60 versus the Kedera?
No.
Just
as hafsha, because that's what we really concern. I mean, you could technically, sure.
It makes a big difference.
No, you could. Well, here you want to save the food.
That's right.
The dairy you can make hagala too.
Well, the question is,
you're not going to have shishim in the kedera keneged the kisu.
His question is, can you add the kedera to ultimately together with the food? It's still missing a little bit in the food to have 60. Can you add the pot as part of the cheshbon to get 60 against the kisu?
No, because you're talking about the tam. The tam, so it's food against food.
What about the believers in the kedera?
That's
So
yeah.
we can't use the.
It's hard to calculate. We don't really know how many blias there are.
No, we can't use the kula.
Right, the chumrah is a different issue, but the kula, it's hard to figure that out. So anyway, so this is a situation that may arise that if it's a ben yomo, it's the wrong kisui. It's been there for a number of minutes. It's hot, of course. What is going on? It's the zayah here. So this is an example of zayah that generates this problem of isur. By the way, I think he says there, even if the cover has holes in it, and there's some steam escaping, it still becomes asur. Now, what happens if he has 2 pots on the stove, and he took the kisui of the kdera basarit, or the fleishike pot, that is hot, and put it on the melicha pot that was still cold. Okay? So this one was hot, and this one was cold.
So the lid should become asur.
And it was there for a little bit of time.
So the lid should become.
The lid and the kdera, but not the tafshil.
And the kedera is also kedera.
Also, kedera, exactly. Yeah. Then the kisui, because the kisui was hot, and even though the kedera was cold, the kisui will be asur, the kedera will be asur, but the tafshil will be mutar, because we don't really know if anything really fell in, or how much fell in. Yeah, it's a form of tatar gavar. Yeah, right. נכון. הדמקרלה בלה, כך זה לשון שם בתתא גברא, right? As it's weighing down, yeah. So here, again, there is a certain amount of heat. Yeah. There's a, yeah. Anyway, so that's what he brings down. Yeah. Okay. כדי קליפה. So it's not, it didn't become asur completely, but you're still going to make a gala to it, because it's asur for even if it's a little asur. Anyway, so that would be the halacha if the bottom was cold, the pot was cold. Okay, there's still an isur for the kisui and the kdera, but not the tafshil. Okay, anyway. So what do we see here from this example brought down in the Beis Yosef? That obviously zayah can make a big difference. Has nothing to do with recha.
By what you just told us, the latest case.
Yeah.
What did the zayah? The last case we didn't have zayah yet. We just said it's tatagava, it's cold, and we have a lid. Where did the zayah come in? You can catch the zayah.
Okay, no.
But what were you referring to?
Not necessarily in that example. In general, what we see is zayah being a problem in these kind of situations of lids, of covers. Not in every situation there's zayah necessarily. Yeah. Yeah.
Now that you mention it,
right.
If we put the lid from the hot pot, this fleischig,
right,
on the cold pot as milchik as a milchik tafshil slide,
right,
or vice versa. But there's no zayah, so there's no moisture. So we have one metal touching the other. So really there shouldn't be anything going on.
Yeah.
It's just a kli touching a kli. And we said without any moisture, it doesn't usher anything. Right. So why would it usher something?
I think it still has to do with the fact that it's sitting ala eish mamash as it's coming. In other words, not necessarily. It doesn't really become usher mi'ikar adin maybe because there's nothing happening yet in the tafshil. But I think I recall that this is a situation where when something is on the heat, on the fire, sitting directly on the fire, then as it is becoming hot, it just produces, the heat that is being produced is enough to make it asur. In other words, it's not exactly a case where you have 2 pots touching each other on the outside without any moisture whatsoever. Here, there is some moisture going on.
So you must be saying if I understand correctly, you're saying there is a little thing already.
There must be something, yeah. Otherwise, I have the same question as you did. Yeah. Otherwise, if there wouldn't be anything at all, then what should it be asur? Yeah. Right, but there is food inside, right? And even though it's not hot yet, the kdera is not hot yet, in itself it's not roteach yet, right? The fact that there is food and it's hot, could be. I think that was the explanation given, that there's still something of a moisture in the pot.
And that's the Beit Yosef.
The Beit Yosef didn't talk about the moisture in that case. The second case, he just brings down the case.
But the Beit Yosef was talking about the
Yeah,
juice,
yeah.
and by
Yeah.
the Beit Yosef, the fog was aser.
Yeah, I have to check it. I have to look at it inside. I'm quoting to you what the Aruch HaShulchan says,
Yeah.
but I didn't have a chance to look into the Beis Yosef. Yeah. Anyway, I believe that's what it was. That there's some moisture there because it sat there for a little bit of time, and we're machmir on that, on the kisui and on the gder itself too.
If the moisture is given off, you're frying everything. What's
Yeah.
normal, like what they say.
Right.
Is
And it's
there enough there to cause,
in what case if you had one?
if the pot
Yeah.
that was cooking
Mm-hmm.
was something, where there is no liquid there?
Okay, excellent question. We will see that next. It's a very interesting machloket about that. Because so far we know Zeya. We know the concept of Zeya, but is Zeya brought about in any kind of a situation? Does it depend on what's being cooking or what's being cooked? Yeah, so we'll see that soon. Okay, so before we go into the Siv Ches, I just wanted to cover the slightly different situation that happens in Kuf Ches. So I'm going to read it from inside. Kuf Ches, the Ramah brings down, that's the Siman that deals with baking in the same oven, Basar and Cholov. So the Ramah brings down like this. Regardless of what we said, he says, about lechatchila b'di'evet, baking in the same oven, cheese, blintzes, steak. Regardless of what we said about that, he says like this. Im ofu otzolu isur veheter tachas machvas achas megulin, if they baked or roasted isur and heter, no, something treif and heter, underneath a pan, a tray of sorts, and they were both megulin, both they were uncovered, asur afilu b'di'eved, and that's a big chiddush. Why? Because there are quite a few leniency when it comes to baking in the oven. Two items that should not be baked in the oven. There are quite a few leniencies. But here he says, afilu b'di'eved. And by the way, if you baked, and we learned that, if you baked bread with meat in the same oven, you can't eat that bread with dairy. Or the other way around. Bread with dairy, you can have it with meat. Now, so what's the problem over there? So that's the situation where you have a machvat covering, almost covering. It's on top of the two items, basar and cholov, being baked underneath it. So that is acting as a form of lid, covering the two. And therefore, even though it's not touching the lid, because then it's a real lid, even though it's not touching the pan, it's underneath it. So what is going on? What's going on is Zeya. Zeya is coming up from the two of them and mixing and coming right back down. So if the ceiling is low, I call it the ceiling, the pan is very, very low, it's covering the two pots, it's going to be a problem if the two are megulin. And this is a key point here, they're both open. As opposed to if one or the other would be covered, then you wouldn't have any problems. So the two of them are uncovered, you have chicken that's being baked in the oven, chicken in its pan. Right next to it, you have cheesecake being baked. And there's a machvat sitting on top of them. It could be the machvat of something else being baked or cooked on top of them. And it's completely covering them. That would be a problem of Zeya. And in Zeya, in this case, even b'di'eved, they would be asr. Both would be asr. That was in Hilchos Taaruvot. That's what we saw in Taaruvot. So the reason I mentioned that is because machvat appears here too, but here it's a different scenario. I'm going to read it inside. מחבת של חלב שנתנו בקירה תחת גדרה של בשר. Here you're putting the מחבת not above the two, where it actually seals it in a sense, and therefore you have a problem of zeya. Here you may have a different kind of zeya, because you have מחבת of milk, and it's not just a dairy מחבת, it actually contains milk. We're going to see that it has to. מחבת של חלב שנתנו בקירה תחת גדרה של בשר, underneath the pot of meat, הזיעה, he clearly says, הזיעה עולה ונבלה בגדרה ואוסרתה. The zeya goes up from the milk, not from the pot. There has to be food. Otherwise, if there is no food in that machvat underneath this other pot, who cares? You follow me? Had this been an empty pan underneath, and you have a pot of meat on top, there's no zayah, there's no problem. Even if they're touching, it's not a problem. If there's no liquid, no food, no nothing in the milk, right? The zayah is not going to travel backwards from the meat down and then back up, for sure not. So this has zayah. Why does it have zayah? Because there's food. So there's actual milk or dairy food in the machvas. So this zayah goes up and it's absorbed in the kedera. Now remember, we're talking about a situation where there's some distance between the two. It's not touching. It's not tipa that fell. It's not one inside the other. It's talking about distance, space between the machvas of chalav and the pot of meat that's in the kira, in this kind of oven. And what are we saying? We're saying is a different scenario than Taaruvot. We're talking about now zayah coming up just from the chalav and going up and reaching to the meat pot.
But how do you know from the mahing about that didn't touch the...
Because the main concern is the zayah here. He says even if all you have is zayah, that's enough to make a problem here. We're not even talking about touching here. This is a din in Sif Ches of zayah, which I gave you a little bit of an introduction before, that we covered a little bit in Taaruvot, that zayah and reicha are issues. And zayah is more of an issue than reicha. Zayah, as we see here, this is not reach, it's zayah. And zayah is going to be a problem, according to everybody. Almost according to everybody, depending on the circumstances. So what's this zayah doing? It's olav and nivla, it will be absorbed in the kedera, and it will make it aser. Only the kedera, and the food in the kedera, but not the milk. The milk, in turn, will not become aser from the meat on top, unless there was a situation where you actually saw the zayah of the meat coming back down into the chalav. We're gonna talk about that, yeah, right?
Why will the top show inside?
Because it's being absorbed into the pot.
It's tatavar. The bottom one here is hot. Maybe that's the
two of them are hot.
Well, the upper one,
it's not the tagavar.
The upper one being hot
yeah.
is really the issue here.
Right.
The bottom one, the zayah,
yes,
that's touching the
right.
pot is hot, at least that's what
right. Right.
So then we have to talk about hot against something that's either hot or cold. In any event, the din of hot applies to it.
Yes.
So it would both usher the pot as well as the contents of it.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would be only kediklipa. If it only ushered the pot, that would be the din of. But kediklipa would be if the tata would be cold and the upper one.
Right.
Would be hot.
In this case, the main condition for making the pot and the contents of that pot aser is that the zayah is yat soledet bo.
Where it touches the pot.
Where it touches the pot. At that particular spot where it touches the pot, because zayah, if you have a lot of distance between the two, the zayah goes up, but by the time it reaches the pot, it's cooled off. If it's within a few inches, you can actually put your hand on top of it, and you will feel the zayah hot.
Yes.
So if the zayah at the point where it touches the pot is yat soledet bo, that's when it becomes a problem. Or the other option would be the gedera is very, very hot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yes.
And even though the zayah that is touching it is not hot, it would also be also.
Uh-huh. Because the zayah becomes hot when it
Exactly.
touches it.
Exactly.
Heating it.
Exactly. Yeah. So what would this be like? This would be like the example of tipa shenafla lakdera. I mean, you're having the combination of the two through a form of heat. Okay. So that's the mechaber. The Ramah says, "Im hoyo cholav b'machvas." So if you had milk in the machvas, boinan shishim batavshil shebagdera neged hacholav shebamachvas. You would need 60 in the tavshil, keneged the whole milk of the machvas. Kol zeh, all of this is only said shamachvas megula.
Now, interesting.
Yeah, go on.
You're ready for it.
Okay, go ahead.
An interesting about the Shulchan he brings from
Yeah. So maybe let's read the Ramah first.
in what you just quoted from Ramah.
In the first part?
In the first part.
Yes.
Im haya halav b'machvat ba'inan shishim, and the other one is im haya halav b'machvat u'ba'inan shishim. The Rabbi Elyahu explains what is the dis by the two nuschot, because both of them appear. There's one Shuchan Aruch where it's written like this, different Shuchan Aruch where it's written like that.
Well, if you say u ba'inan, then you're saying that what he just said was on condition that there was milk in the pan.
On the mechaber.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so which we said anyway, which was understood.
But
okay.
And
Right.
the way we have it, the way you were reading it, if I
Right, is without the vav. Right.
Without the vav, which means that he's producing a new case now.
Right.
When do you need 60? When there is milk in the pot and in the mahbah. Then you need the 60.
Then you need the 60 because
That's a whole different
halacha, and then you need 60 against the milk that's in the pan.
So the case of the mechaber was when there wasn't milk in the mahbah.
No, the mechaber is talking about the kedera becoming asur.
Right.
The Ramah is just adding, and therefore, once it becomes asur,
If there is milk in it, you need 60.
that's why you brought up, because of the im, it raised the question as to is that the real nusach or not? Because why say im?
Right.
You see what I mean? So
Right.
that raised the question. But
So this was an extra case. There is a case of the mechaber.
Yeah.
An extra case if there is a
yeah,
milk in
no,
the
right. You could say that. Yeah. So, but anyway, either
By the
way,
I have the same. I have that without the vav here.
yeah.
This is a nusach here.
Right. So, but anyway, having milk in the pan means that you need shishim keneged in the tavshel keneged the milk in the machvas. All of this is only said when, of course, the pan underneath the kedera was megula, was uncovered. Vehaze'ah ola, and the steam goes up. Min hama'achal atzmon, from the food itself, like the rasha left to the pot on top of it. V'gam mayri, and it's also talking about shu bekiruv kol kach shayat soledet baze'ah b'makom shenogeh b'kedera. It has to be, as we just said before, that it's the space between them is close enough that the steam is hot, like yat soledet bo, in the place where it is touching, or the place of contact in the kedera. Avalim ena yat soledet baze'ah kol shari. If there's no yat soledet baze'ah in the ze'ah, everything is water. V'lachen, because of this kind of situations where ze'ah may or may not make a difference depending on the distance of the two being cooked or baked in the oven at the same time. Lachen, he says, toilin basar yabesh agdero shel chalav. I've never seen this before, but you could sometimes dry meat all the way on top, even though right below there is Melicha stuff being cooked. And
It's a form of picking. No?
It's a form of drying, salamis and all that.
Yeah. How is it called? Isn't there? In Hebrew there is it.
Yeah. Anyway, you could do that. V'lo chayshina lezeh she'oila, because it's far. It's not yat soledes boy. I think some require to rinse the meat anyway of any vapor that may have gone up, even though it's not hot. They require, I think, hadocha. But you're allowed to put it in lachatchila.
That have be something that
Make hadacha too. Right. Right. You're right.
Because we learned before that there are asur.
Lachatchila to make it. Yeah.
If it's not something that you rinse off
Anyway. Yeah. V'chen im hamachvas mechusa. If you're also in luck, if the machvat is mechuseh or mechusa, if the pan is covered, hakol shari. So either there's distance and there's no yat soledes boy in the zeya, or the pan is covered, then everything is mutter. Midedahavesh, take datos, no go zu bezu, just like having two pots, like we said before, touching each other. The ein oisin zeh ze benegia kol shekem bezeya. They don't answer each other benegia, even if there's zeya, because there's no roitev in between them. Two pots touching each other. Obviously, he says, with all these things, you want to be extra careful. Even if one of them is covered, if one of them is far away, and it won't be yat soledes boy, you don't want to take a chance. You don't want to put the things that do not belong together. Iser v'heter or basar b'chalav. All right. On this, the Pri Megadim says that let's assume that you don't have a pan of milk. Let's say you have water. Remember we talked about water before? Water that was cooking in the kedera versus milk. Let's assume you have what's cooking in this dairy pan. It is a dairy pan. Is water only.
Right.
But it's a dairy pan.
Oh, before you continue,
Yeah.
one detail
Sure.
I found quite
Yeah.
interesting about the
Uh-huh.
He says, from the fact that the Ramah is saying that the zeah is coming from the milk itself,
Right.
mashma, there's also zeah that's coming from the pot, or from the pan that's containing the milk, but that zeah doesn't asur.
One more time? Say that again.
Because the Ramah is talking about the zeah that's coming from the
Milk.
Halav atzmo
Right.
itself.
Right.
It's mashma that there's a different type of zeah also that's not coming from the milk, but from the pot that is the milk, and only that zeah doesn't asur.
That zeah does
the
not.
only one that asur is the one that comes from the milk.
Right, that's true. That's true. Yeah. The only zeh that we're concerned is the food. Okay. Well, we still need to talk about that soon. In a moment.
Okay.
Yeah. But then so the Pri Megadim raises the question: what happens if you have a dairy pot, but you're having water being cooked in it? And since you're having water being cooked, there's going to be zeya or steam of the water, right? That's going to reach the K'deres or Basar. It's going to be yatziledes, boy.
So it's water.
But it's not a problem, he says. There's no reason to aser. Why would I think you would want to aser? Because it's dairy pot. So it's dairy water, right?
It's water that it's cooking in a dairy pot.
Right. But it says it's not a problem. Now, you have to understand where the Pri Megadim is coming from. We will be learning a very important halacha soon. That the Ramah says that, the Ramah brings it down, at least he's machmer, that if you took a tea kettle, or not a tea kettle, you took a pot, a fleishike pot, that had boiling water, and you poured it into a melicha pot, and it was lo nifsaka kiluach, in other words, you're pouring it, okay? That's called, that form of pouring is called, on that form of pouring we call it, that it's a chibur.
A chibur between what and what?
Between the two pots.
A chibur coming about through something that's moist. Through liquid. A chibur coming around through liquid.
Remember there's a question we talked about a little bit, if nitzuk is a chibur or not. Nitzuk means a continuous flow from the top to the bottom, without any stopping. Does that connect the one that's in the bottom to the one that's on top? Because they're not touching, but the liquid is connecting perhaps the two of them. So the Ramah says, in this case of a fleishike pot pouring into a melicha pot, we say nitzok chiburhu, and you make the pot aser here.
Both at the bottom.
The both. I think both. Yeah. So, anyway, we'll get to that. I don't remember all the details, but that's what the Ramon is machmir very much there. And this is an important halacha concerning people who have only one sink. Kiyor. Right? And they use it for fleishiks and milichiks. It's a problem, especially if it's a porcelain. If it's a stainless steel, the advantage of stainless steel sinks is that you can easily kasher it with irui. By pouring hot boiling water, and that's how we do it for Pesach. You can kasher your own stainless steel sinks by just pouring boiling hot water. You don't have to do more than that. You don't have to do libun. You don't have to do agalaf. I mean, Kabbalah, kachbala. The same way it's used the whole year. That's the way you make it kosher. So you can clean it by just using the hot water, even from the faucet, in a sense. Yeah, as long as it's very hot. Yeah. Boiling water, you make the whole stain. But if it's porcelain, you cannot kasher them. You know, if you're a new tenant moving into a place that was used before and there is a porcelain sink there, one way to deal with it is just to put a plastic insert, I tell people. So the dishes are not touching the sink.
As well.
What is that?
And the water isn't touching the sink either, the dishes.
Yeah.
And if the water were to touch the sink, the dishes would also be in trouble with the sink.
Well, that's what I mean. When you're having the water coming down them, yeah. And then there are people who don't even know anything, and they put them together at the same time. Basar bechalab. You know, I'm talking about people that are careful with fleishiks and milichas, separating the dishes. But still, the sink contains the blias of both. Even though the reality really is that all of that is pogum between all the Ajax and all the cleansers that you use. You know.
That's after you finished washing one, not 10 times gone because it also.
Right,
but if you put both of them at once.
No, then that's no good.
Also, it's a problem.
In other words, it's
so it's not being your.
Therefore, in theory, only in theory, it's not as big of a problem. But we don't use that. We don't do it lechatchila. Remember, with Eina Ben Yomu, we don't do things lechatchila. Right.
Because you might come to.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. But. In other words, if you had no other situation, you would be able to use it. Yeah, you would be able to. If you not ben yomo, it's pogum for sure. Yeah, you clean it very, very well. Yeah.
But that's only if it's guaranteed that the kalim weren't just rinsed in hot water, but that Ajax or whatever was actually used.
Yeah, of course.
If it can happen.
No, when you know for a fact, yeah, you sure.
But if it can happen,
that it was
one
not
would only rinse with hot water the kalim, because you
just
want to get rid of what's on there. But on this one particular occasion, on this one particular, always liquid soap is used.
Sure.
But on this one particular,
you didn't use
the
right, so it would not be pogrom.
Then it would not be pogrom, and now you would really make all your flashing kalim trade.
Sure.
And go in there.
That's
so
right.
Since there is such a possibility, I wonder whether one would allow it lahativ.
No, we try to either. Well, you can't always change the sink if you're a tenant. But
maybe use plastic insert.
The plastic insert is the best in those kinds. That's what I tell people. With dishwashers, it's a little bit different. To replace the inside, according to those opinions who are machmir. You have a treif dishwasher. Can you really make it kosher? Depending on what the insert, you replace the insert. If you can, that's the best thing to do. What is it? Depending on what it's made out of, can you do hagala to it? Is there, in other words, how was it used before?
Self-clean.
Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't really. Yeah.
You're talking about the dishwasher? Or
The one that holds the dishes, where the dishes are sitting. That's metal. And usually, because it's metal, if it's not metal, then you have the same problem, almost, because it's spritzing from the wall. Yeah, if it's plastic, it's a problem. But many times, the walls are metal, it's just what's holding the dishes is plastic.
Or plastic coated.
Plastic coated. And that's a question of whether if Hagala is good enough for it. Does Hagala really take place inside, even though it's not, even the truth of the matter is it's Kebolokach Poltoy. So,
do we say actually by plastic that it becomes...
No, so it's not... Exactly, we're not that as machmir, but still, there is a chumrah on plastic.
Wouldn't plastic actually be better?
Why would it be better?
Because does plastic actually milk? They didn't have plastic.
No, it's a new material. That's exactly. So there's a little bit of a suffix about it because it's a new material. Yeah. Anyway, so because of this fakus...
Does that mean there's more room to be...
Yes, sure, yeah. And as a result of that, there is... Yeah, sure.
It doesn't need to be toivel in there.
Right, exactly, yeah. Anyway, only glass and metal, yeah. The Torah says on that clearly, So anyway, so as you pointed out, there is room for leniency with these things, but nevertheless, these are issues that come up as a result of fleishiks and melichiks, or misusing it, or the previous tenant Bichlal used treifas. So anyway, getting back to the Pri Megadim. So in the Pri Megadim's case, you have water, but it's Melicha water. Melicha water has steam too. The steam goes up and it touches. Why isn't that not a problem? Because it's not barnat de hetera. We're going to be learning about nat barnat soon. Nat barnat means it's a secondary tam. Tam is a problem, right? We remember we covered that flavor, tam keikar. But when you have a second generation tam, if we can call it that, right, where it's coming out from the pot going into the water, now from the water going into the second pot, that we'll explain it later on. It basically loses its effectiveness. Depends how. Yeah, we'll talk about it later. What does it mean that nat barnat is mutter or is usher? Or when does something become a nat barnat? At what stage? How does it become a nat barnat? But basically, it's a secondary tam. It's not the original tam coming from the pot. It's going into the water first. Went into the water, and then you're going in. So it's milk. Milk is not a treif. Milk is hetera. So nat barnat be'hetera is not a problem. Nat barnat de isura would be a problem. So if what you had in this pan if this was a treif pan that the goy, the maid, is boiling water or something, making herself something that's kosher, it's not treif. Though it's water, it's a liquid, it's something, whatever else. But it's even if it's not barnat, but it's not barnat de isura, it's no good. Then even if it was water, because it's isura, it would be a problem.
And one wonders why one would confuse, because nat barnat hetera, what the nat barnat accomplishes is the heter power to aser thing.
Yes.
But nat barnat isura, what you want the nat barnat there to accomplish is far more radical. You want the nat barnat to abolish the already existing isur.
The already existing isur.
Now, why would something that has the power to prevent something from making an isur simultaneously, therefore, have the power to abolish an existing isur? Yeah. Well, there's no reason to assume that. Yeah. So that's why I'm surprised that people would actually.
Yeah, the difference between heter and isur.
No, the people think since a nat barnat can permit can take away the heter's koach to usher something, therefore not should also be mevatel and isser that
Right. It's quite different, yeah. So anyway, so the Pri Megadim brought down this halacha with the water, because he says that even the Ramah would agree here. The same Ramah that says if you poured hot boiling water from the flesh into the meat, into the milk, right? This is how we got into the sink. That says that the nitzuk would be a chibur, that it would aser, right? The keli there. Even though all it is water, that's in the case of nitzuk chibur, when the two are connected, where he's machmer and asers. Over here, he would agree too that the zeya coming up of a not hetera would not present a problem. In other words, don't compare the two. Just because he's machmer there, here he would not be machmer. All it is zeya. It's not that there's no real continuous kiluach or flow. Plus, it's a not hetera. Over there, it's also the hetera. But over there, it's a continuous flow. Here, all it is zeya. That's the Pri Megadim. All right, just to finish up over here in Sif Ches, we finished the Ramah. I just want to review one more idea here. The Mekor of this halacha is the Rosh. The Rosh is the one that goes through the various proof, various hochachot of how we know zeya is a problem. Otherwise, how would we know? Steam is a problem in the same way that tam is a problem. So he goes through the various examples that he quotes. But one of them we're familiar with, and that is the fact that we noticed before, we learned halacha, that if you went ahead and covered a pot with a lid, even though there was milk falling into the meat, what is the din? That now, because you've covered it, you've actually allowed for the whole thing to be considered one unit, that they all can contribute to be mevatel that tipas challah that fell on that piece that was sticking out. If it's, of course, in the rotev, then of course it's already in the sauce. But even if it fell on it, but you covered it, even if you didn't cover it right away, covered it later, still you accomplished something. So we see from that halacha too, and that's one of the rayas that zeya is significant, because that covering the pot enables you to now use the entire contents, the entire contents of the pot to be mevatel the milk. How does that happen? Because of the zeya, because it's all being cooked together. It's all combining together.
Your situation that you have that is not touch the liquid, the rotev. If you cover, then it will not make that make a hana. Okay?
Exactly, sure, exactly.
Not make hana, because you cover. Then the zeah will have like that that you have a rotev.
Yeah, exactly. Another point there that is important, that is brought down, there's a mahari and there's a bach. Our case is talking about a machvat that is covering or being pretty close on top of the I'm sorry, not in this case, but in Taaruvot, where you have a machvat that is covering the two at the same time, that we said is a problem. So there, even though we said there it's a problem, there's one opinion that holds. I think that the Bach basically says, in the event, in case you do have space for the steam to flow out, that's the dim, and it's not really being constrained underneath this cover, but it does have some room to vent, then it would be okay. The Bach says this bisvara, but he says since the Mahari, who brings down that din, and his opinion is that no, it would never make a difference, even if you had steam flowing from the side, because of the closeness of the proximity between that cover, that machvat. This is in the Hilchos Taaruvot example, where the machvat is on top and covering the two. Because they're so close, says even if you have the space for it to flow out, it's hot enough, he says, it's hot enough that it's not affected. So therefore the Bach wants to say that if you have the space, plus you have a suffix, if it was yat soledet bo, the two of them, you can be makel. You would be able to be, in other words, if you had a suffix where the bichlal, the steam was already yat soledet, when you caught this problem. You have a suffix if it was yat soledet, plus you have the steam flowing to the sides and not being limited or constrained to a narrow space, you could be lenient there. That's what the Bach says. All right, now talking about your question as far as the contents of this pan in Sif Ches here in this Siman. it is basically shown that the zeya of a food is like a food. That's the lashon of the poskim. The zeya shel ha'ma'achal k'ma'achal atzmo. Yeah. Now, okay, does that mean any food that I make will produce zeya? It will be a problem. What if it's yavesh? What if it's dry? Is a zeya k'ma'achal only said if it's liquid, or even if it's dry? From the Rambam, I think it appears to be that it's only if it's liquid, but not everybody else. The vast majority, I believe, of the poskim are saying is that there's no difference. We don't see that they differentiate. Zeya, if zeya is produced, usually some degree of zeya. Zeya of nozlim, of liquid, is definitely more serious, because you may have it right away, you may have more of it, I'm not sure. It may be quicker. Zeya of ma'achal yavesh, could it be that it takes longer for it to come out? Possible. I mean, we have seen differences between liquids and solids. I mean, obviously there is some differences between them. The liquid is actually evaporating. No, Ilan? It's more than just the zeya. It's the mamoshas of the whole thing is coming up.
I thought the zeya is the mamoshas.
Yes, yeah, it is, yeah. But with the vayavesh, will it evaporate as fast? You see what I mean? So, but still, they say we don't differentiate. If you have zeya, lekula o lechumra, it would be the same whether it's nozlim liquid or whether it's solids. It's mashma like that from the Mechaber and the Ramah in Hilchas Pesach by Chometz. There's a question: if you put the lid of something that is chometzdik on top of something that is kosher Pesach, it makes no difference what you were cooking, even if it was solid. Yeah, asube mashu, they were machmer because of that. Yeah, machmer. But it depends if it's erev Pesach or if it's already on Pesach. There's some differences. But we see from the lashon there that it doesn't really make a difference. Nobody seems to really be making a chiluk except for one or two that say that maybe by liquids only. But for the most part, we see it's the same. All right, just to finish up, since zeya is a problem, much more than reicha, that is why we have to be careful with milichiks and fleishiks in the oven at the same time, which is what we discussed in Hilchas Taaruvot, that technically, if you have a big oven with a lot of space for it to ventilate, even though the doors are closed, it shouldn't be as much of a problem when the milichik and the fleishik are in each other's separate pots. We are machmer, of course. It's a chumrah, especially since our oven doors open from the side. So there are some opinions that hold that an oven whose door opens from the side is more problematic than the ones that had the opening on top. Okay, so size of an oven makes a difference. Door, the opening, could possibly make a difference. But you know what really makes the most of a difference? And to avoid any problems? No. If you can actually lechatchila put the two in the oven at the same time, if you had no choice, if one of them is covered, you don't even need both of them covered. One of them is covered. If the chicken is covered, the meat is covered, you can technically. We don't do it lechatchila today. You had no choice. Now, Rav Moshe Feinstein speaks about this. We don't even use today the ovens the same day. If all you have is one oven, we don't use it the same day we use it for fleisha, we don't use it for melicha. We wait one day. Because then you gain the advantage of eino b'nyoimo. Why are we concerned? We're concerned about zeya that remained in the ceiling of the oven that may eventually come down.
You always have to cover the side.
Exactly. Well,
if you always cover the fly sheet,
right,
the only zeya you will have will be milchik.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the fly sheet you'll always be covering, so it's not a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So here again, what is the problem? The problem is zeya, and here is a concern. It's only a concern. It's not a reality, because that there may be zeya in the ceiling of the ovens left over from before. So lechatchila today we don't use the oven the same day. We use it separate days. If you use it separate days, it could even be uncovered. If you have to use it the same day, then you have to have one covered. Even though you may claim, yes, but they're big ovens, it's at least an important chumrah. We cover one. Most people do not do it at the same time, but if you have no choice, time is running short.
There's also a problem if something overflows.
Of course, you have additional problems of overflowing, that it has to be clean where you're putting it down, obviously, yeah. So these are some of the issues. So regardless of the size of our ovens today, that's not so much the where it's going to make a difference anymore. It's the fact that we are concerned that there still may be zayah around. So because of that, in order to avoid any problems, either you cover one, you cover both. Don't use them for sure. Better don't use them at the same time. If possible, don't use it the same day. If somebody only has one oven, he should try not to use it the same day, but another day. If you can afford getting two ovens, then you've solved the problem. You can have, as they say, the cake and eat it too. Yeah. All right, we'll stop over here.
Maybe for next time, I did have a question based on this.
Yes.
Is what happens when you take a children's pot off the fire,
Right.
you take your
Uh-huh.
it's safe,
Uh-huh.
and you're putting in hot water from the children's pot, the steam rising
Right.
to the faucet.
To the faucet, yeah.
Later someone comes, puts hot water into a cup and adds.
Yeah. If they're very, very close, it's the same kind of a problem.
Wouldn't you have the problem that the faucet now
Is becoming dairy or meat because of the steam.
becoming meat because of the steam of the children's pot?
If it was long, if it was long enough there, if it was long enough, if it was only a couple of seconds, it's not. But you're right. These possibilities are raised. You know that here your handles are becoming both. You know, if it touched, if it came in contact with both, so you have to be extra.
So can you say not barnat there too? By the way, the Shulchan with respect to that says only that we possibly lechumbra by not barnat derech bishul. We're only lenient by not barnat if you're now eating the second generation flesh with the dairy.
Well, eating it, we're not machmir at all.
But if you're cooking it together, there are opinions.
In other words, what he's talking about is that what we'll be learning very soon. Actually, one of the most relevant halachas of Basar בחלב. You just made rice in a fleisha kapata that was used that day.
That's far, dude.
Right? And now you want to have a cup of milk, a glass of milk with that rice. According to everybody, you can have it. What you cannot, what the difference between the Sephardim and Ashkenazim is the Sephardi will allow you to put cheese on that rice.
Right.
And Ashkenazim say no.
I thought that was true.
But you can have in the same meal,
The same meal,
the same
I thought
meal,
you meant
according to everybody, right? So that one, Mr. Shem, we'll cover later. Yeah.